Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. My name is Carla Renata, and I am your host for today's half hour with Cross. Our conversation today is with Ben Watkins. He's the creator and executive producer of Cross, which is currently streaming on Prime Video and is currently in production for season 2, starring Aldous Hodge. Watkins has previously created and served as executive producer of Hand of God for Amazon, executive producer for Burn Notice on USA, Truth Be Told, one of my personal favorites on Apple TV Plus, and Wu-Tang: An American Saga for Hulu. As an industry vet hailing from Berkeley, that's right, showrunner Ben Watkins started his career as an actor playing Dr. Wesley Carter on The Young and the Restless, and his first foray into writing garnered his short, Quest for Ref, awards at the American Black Film Festival, and it was an official selection at the Sundance Film Festival. Now, if that wasn't enough, he's a founding member of Sweat Equity Alliance, Sea Change, a South Bay community activist organization, and recently, Mr. Watkins has joined the board of directors for Friends of Allensworth, the first town in California to be founded, financed, and governed by African Americans. And again, if he wasn't busy doing all that, to keep him even busier, he serves on several committees as a core member of the WGA Showrunners Training Program, where he is clearly an active member. His production company, Blue Monday Productions, co-founded with his wife, Candy, was established with a dedication to exceptional storytelling and commitment to community service. In addition to Cross, Blue Monday has a significant slate of upcoming projects in development. Their Breakthrough Artist Program, a 3-month paid apprenticeship for writing, producing, and/or directing, focuses on increasing access and accelerating the learning curve for artists who have demonstrated exceptional talent, commitment to community, and giving back. Having said all of that, let me introduce to you the exceptional talent with a commitment to giving back, the amazingly gifted and talented Mr. Ben Watkins.
Man, thank you so much, Carla.
Listen, Ben, you have to give people their flowers while they're here to receive them. And that's what we do here at Half Hour. We give you showrunners your flowers, and then we also give you your flowers with your programs, right? So yes, it was my pleasure to introduce you. For those of us who have not seen Cross, who I can't imagine hasn't seen it because it's like #1 on Prime Video, could you just give folks an overview of what the series entails?
Cross is a detective thriller based on the worldwide famous long-running Alex Cross series that was written and created and is still going by James Patterson. So it's an adaptation of that book series. But it's you have this singular detective who's incredibly intelligent, genius intellect, and also happens to be have a PhD in psychology, and he uses his superpowers to hunt down and get into the minds of serial killers and bring them to justice. So that's what it is on one hand. On the other hand, it's a love letter to DC. It is a celebration of Black culture, and it is an exploration, a character journey for our title character, Alex Cross, who's played by Aldous Hodge.
And with that, we're going to roll this trailer.
I'm not a monster. I don't kill for fun. You're going to be part of a masterpiece. And when I'm done, the world will know the truth.
What do you do, Alex?
I'm a detective.
You mean you're a cop?
Metro PD. We joined the force together.
No! I got it!
You the doctor?
PhD, psychology.
Let's see how long you last.
But you can call me Detective Alex Cross.
They found him dead in his car. Apparent overdose.
I didn't make it sugar, playing by the rules.
Died shortly after suicide.
Found him, they was shaved.
They got killed to cover up what happened. I think he was murdered. Whoever killed him had to change him into someone else first.
I know I'm hard, baby, but now I'm fine.
This girl's missing.
Multiple victims are connected to this.
And you know this how?
It's doing this thing. This is where it all started.
Have you always been this good? You're not in my head.
Oh, I'm definitely living rent-free. You know.
I'm checking trouble, sugar, moving down alibi.
You got kids?
A boy and a girl.
You raised a good man. It's just been so much.
I lost my wife a little over a year ago.
I got a problem, but that's okay, cause trouble man.
Alex!
I want to be here for you.
You're not managing very well.
It gets weirder.
He's not gonna stop unless I make him stop.
He was in my house. He's never gonna give up.
You think you can stop him?
I know I can. Because I know him better than he knows himself.
Let me tell you something. When I saw that trailer for the series before it came on, I was like, I am all in for all of this. This black true crime savant, so to speak. So
Yeah.
having said that, were you a fan of true crime before you started delving into the world of James Patterson with Cross?
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of all crime. You know what I mean? It might be a little morbid, but even from a young age, my favorite books were detective stories and crime stories. And it ranged from the classics, from I like the Detective Noir and Raymond Chandler's and the Dashiell Hammett's, all the way up to the Walter Mosley's. The I like the John D. McDonald's. I was watching the detective shows. I was watching Hill Street Blues. I was watching anything I could get my hands on that had detectives and crime stuff in it at an early age, and that never stopped. So I've always been someone who loves that genre. Of course, when true crime expanded, sort of, you started getting the 48 hours, or the first 48 hours daily. I will watch all of that if I had the time. So this was really in my wheelhouse.
Clearly. Did you have an opportunity to collaborate with James Patterson on this small version? Because we all know that we've seen big versions of it that have starred Morgan Freeman and Tyler Perry in the past. And this is a very different reimagined version for the small screen. So I'm interested to know if you had an opportunity to collaborate with him or if he gave you his blessing to just do what you needed to do.
Actually, it was a combination of both. I mean, uh, on one hand, when I signed on, or when I was considering signing on, I made it very clear that there were some things I would do that I think would be departures from what we had seen in the big screen adaptations, and that I thought would be really valuable for the storytelling. I thought there were some things that were in the books that features just didn't have time to talk about. And also, we're in a different day and age. So I made it clear that, my version of Alex Cross was going to be very specifically Black, and we were going to really show the community he's coming from and the unique challenges that he would confront, being a detective in DC. But I also made it clear that I was going to honor what I think James Patterson set up so well. And in fact, in one of our conversations, when I was telling him, "Hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's different than what has been done in the past, and I'm going to take it there. I hope you're okay with that." And he said, "I want you to." But he said, "I have two requests. One is that I want him to be at his core a good man. That's always been how I've seen him. And two, that whenever you see him, he's the smartest person in the room." And both of those requests really fit with how I felt I wanted to approach this show.
What I want to flip back and talk about is doing it from a culturally Black perspective, because I noticed in the trailer you guys use Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man. And I
Mm.
noticed throughout the series that most of the artists that are used for the soundtrack or the background music of the action, so to speak, are either Black artists that we know or Black artists that we don't know. And I wanted to know what was the conversation that took place in order to make that happen.
Oh, that was a really great process. It starts with when I'm writing a script, I start building a playlist that helps me get into the mood and the tone of the world, the story, and the characters. So, some of those songs are gonna be freaky, horror songs because it's a serial killer. Some of those songs are gonna be sort of have that sort of action, that adrenaline building feel to them. But for this story, a lot of those songs had character building and world building songs that were throwbacks or contemporary songs that are current but sort of have that evergreen feel, like they're timeless. They would have been a hit anytime. And so I have that playlist when I finish the script, and it's usually about 2 to 3 hours long, and that's where it started. And while I was writing the pilot, and I'm thinking about what I love about crime, and I started thinking about where this sits in the pantheon and in that spectrum of crime stuff, I started thinking about how, noir has now become a very nostalgic feel for us. When you see folks dressed a certain way, it reminds us of noir, and I wanted to tap into, or if you hear certain phrases of speech or you hear types of music, and it dawned on me that one of the things I really love is when people scratch the nostalgia itch. And I decided I want to do that with this show, but I didn't want to, be too obvious with it, but I wanted to lace in music that would take you back to a certain time and a certain feeling. And some of that music might take you all the way back to what it feels like to be in mystery noir, but a lot of it might be what is take you back to if you grew up in the 70s or in the 80s. And the beauty of it is a lot of that music still permeates in our culture right now, not just Black culture, but all over, American culture. So if someone hears a Marvin Gaye song, it won't be the first time. They will have had little drops and seeds for pretty much their lifetime. And that's almost a cheat code, because if I drop a song like that in there, people immediately are associating that with certain moods and certain feelings. And so we used that, and we had a great music supervisor, Robin Erding, who we talked about that with. But I also had a big meeting with Amazon and said that that was one of the prime directives of this show, that nostalgia noir is what I called it. And music was a big part of that. And I knew that they were listening when they gave me a preview of the trailer we just watched, because they are the ones who picked that song, and it is right in line with how we saw the show. And so then we had a meeting. I remember on the meeting, I'm looking at the Amazon folks, and I said, man, we love the trailer. Please, why did y'all put that song? I know you're not going to clear that song and pay for that song. And then they kind of smiled and winked at me, and they said, let us see what we can do. And I was thrilled when they were able to get that song and have that be one of the centerpieces for the trailer.
Wow, because it's powerful, and the way that you guys arranged it and cut it, it goes back to what you were saying about nostalgia noir and having that haunting kind of creepy feeling to it, which that song isn't. The lyrics to that song are, but the song itself is not that.
Mhm.
So it was really nice to hear how it was reimagined and reconfigured for the purposes of using it on this show. So thank you for telling me about that. I couldn't wait to ask you that question. There's also a lot of discussion around the dramatization of crime stories and how in some instances there's an over romanticizing of the killers themselves, or in other instances we put the victims in a light that's not humanistic. I just wanted to get your thoughts about that statement.
Yeah, I mean that's I think a challenge no matter what you do. If you want to create a really good story, the nemesis needs to be compelling. If you want to make the nemesis compelling, then you have to infuse them with something that makes them relatable, even if you don't like it. So then you're humanizing, potential monsters. And then you have victims, and depending on the situation, sometimes those victims, they just become that victim. They're just anonymous. They're almost nameless. They actually just become a function. And we, in my entire writers' room, we really wanted to cut against that. We also, and there's a separate conversation about how you portray heroes, but just in terms of how you portray villains and victims, we felt like if we were going to ever get you to fall into the sort of the web of charm that our season one villain Ramsey has, we had to do that so that you would have an understanding of how he could seduce people into his traps and then exploit them. And so we had to give him these qualities, but we had to constantly remind people of how vicious and brutal and ruthless he was. On the same hand, we had to really take our victim in season 1 and make them a real person. And I'll never forget when we were breaking some story one time and we had the character that was going to be, captive for much of season 1. And one time I said, okay, well, in this scene, the victim, and one of my writers said, well, her name is Shannon. And
Mm.
we really stopped the room in that moment. I said, yeah, thank you for reminding me, but also that's how we gotta, like, we need to double down on her name is Shannon. She needs to be somebody and she needs to have agency. That'll make our story better, but it'll also change, you know, the the script a little bit in terms of how victims normally get portrayed. And that actually even influenced how we cast, because at that point now you're talking about I need to cast a hero
Mm.
to
I
play
think
this.
there needs to be an episode called Her Name is Shannon.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great
That's
one.
what I'm saying. But this, and you talking about Shannon and us talking about serial killers, is the perfect segue into our next clip.
You thought you were special.
You're not in my head, boy. And you're not getting a confession.
Oh, I'm definitely living rent free. And you already confessed.
I'm just amusing myself right now.
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, you did. Life's fitful fever. Yeah, I caught that.
It's Macbeth, right?
It's the affliction caused by the burden of guilt. You said that's what's making you sick. That's a confession. On tape. Free chicken.
Well, good luck getting a conviction with that.
Already checked with the DA. She's ready to file. And hey,
This is DC, Slim. You might not even see your arraignments.
not without protective custody. Did you want to talk about PC? Like,
That is one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. That scene right there. And it's a lot longer than the clip that we just showed, but that is one of my favorite scenes. Mostly because I come from theater and you have that Macbeth quote where you say the
Life's
infliction
fitful.
caused by the burden of guilt.
Yeah.
So having said that, do you think that there's a fascination? Why do you think that there's a fascination with serial killers, their stories, and the evolution of taking them down with audiences?
Mm. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I will say I think that in general we have a fascination with the human psyche, and we are especially drawn to the extremes of the human psyche in all forms. And there's a unique flavor to the fascination with killers, because um, if we figure out what makes them tick, then maybe we become safer. That's how I look at it. And
Mm.
serial killer, that's even escalated to another level. So, and for a lot of us, we can't relate to it, but we know there's a part of us that are connected to it because that is a person. So I think that's one of the things that really pushes us towards, this fascination to serial killers, crime, anything like that. And, when people say the phrase morbid curiosity, I think
Mm.
that part of it is, that is built into our DNA to figure out what went wrong or why something happened or why somebody acts like that, because we don't want to be the next victim.
Wow, that was deep, Ben.
Yes.
That was you right, but that was deep. Um, I can't let you go though without talking about the casting. You mentioned Ed Ramsey, who is beautifully played by Ryan Eggold in this series, who is deliciously diabolical. What was your process in casting some of these characters like Ed, like John Sampson, who's also beautifully played by Isaiah Mustafa, and my girl Juanita Jennings?
Everybody involved in casting deserves a tip of the cap. Kim Coleman was our casting director, and we had so much support from the studio. At the time, it was Paramount. Now it's CBS Studios. Amazon was very supportive. They all understood we were doing ambitious casting. They were inspired by the page, and I like that the story inspired folks. My approach is usually I want to find someone who inhabits that character and actually brings naturally some of the characteristics that I'm looking for in that character. So with Aldous, I'm looking for somebody who just has extreme intellect. I'm looking for somebody that seems to be very curious and almost is like the world's most interesting man, just sort of looking to have more experiences. Um, and then I'm seeing if they're willing to go to these other places and that I'm going to push this character. And so he said he wasn't just willing to go. That was what he was hoping, he was looking for in a new role. So he already had some of the core characteristics. And by the way, he also looks like a superhero. He's got this physique like that. That doesn't hurt. Um,
No,
and
it
so
doesn't.
now you got
It's
your anchor
beautiful to look
piece,
at too.
right? Then you have your anchor piece, and now you start thinking, okay, who are we putting around him? And then you have to have the Samson character in the books, they call him two John, like there's two men, he's that big. And so you already have a guy like Aldous who's a big guy in himself. Now who are you going to get that's big? And then the key thing I said was I want someone who feels like we all want him to be our best friend. And we searched for a long time looking for that person who had the size capabilities, the sense of humor, the internal innate goodness, but also a firmness, because sometimes your best friend has to tell you about yourself. And so that turned into Isaiah Mustafa. Now I got these two dynamic characters, and I'm thinking, well, if somebody faces off to them, it can't just be, you know, um, a recurring person. It can't just, it has to actually be, we approach it like it would have to be the star of the show. We're
Mm.
looking for the star of the show. Let's pretend Cross is about Ed Ramsey. Who would be the star of that show? And at that point, I started looking for folks who had led shows, if they, or at least had that type of, because it takes a little some star power, star quality to really become the lead of your own show. And he was in New Amsterdam, and he had already made a name for himself and other stuff. And luckily, timing wise, Ryan Eggold was willing to take a departure from what he had been doing on New Amsterdam for all of that time, and step into that villain role. And that was great. And then the fabric, it was just looking for the right people and being and not falling prey to trends. So we have a rule: best actor wins. And Juanita Jennings comes in, she kills it. Melody Hurd, Caleb Elijah, Samantha Walks. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was just people that we were searching, but they came in and took it.
I love it. It is a stellar, stellar cast. And let me just give a shout out to Kim Coleman, your casting director, because I love how one of the detectives is a curvy, beautiful Black woman and not somebody that is a size two and of
Hmm.
another persuasion. So I just have to give you and Kim Coleman a shout out for that because that was really refreshing to see go down. Um,
Yeah, Stacey Greenwell. Shout out to her and to Nzinga Stewart, who was part of that process of finding and making sure our cast was reflective of our world.
and it truly is. It truly is. Um, we got a little bit of time left, and I just wanted to ask you, is there one thing about the series that stands out for you and
Mm.
that would make someone who hasn't had a chance to see it check it out?
Our goal was to create a thriller that would make people come for the mysteries and the thriller, that adrenaline pulse pounding, twisty turny thriller. Create a thriller to make people come for the mysteries, but when they got there, they would stay for the characters. And I think that's one of the surprising things about our show. But I also think, speaking of thrillers, there's a twist in season one, and I have yet to come across a fan who I've been talking to who saw it coming. And I'm extremely proud of that. That's hard to do in this day and age when everyone's so used to different stories and so literate when it comes to storytelling. But we have one that works and seems to be catching everybody off guard. And I think if you tune into this show, you will enjoy that.
Cool. And one last question. I really loved how this true crime savant play by Aldous Hodge made it known to the suspect that he is superior in every instance that he's dealing with these people. But what more importantly, I loved how you really delved into his relationship with his family, with how this man who has this true crime job is trying to navigate his family. He's trying to navigate relationships outside of the person that was the mom of his kid. I mean, there's all of that.
Mhm.
How important was it for you to be able to have that conveyed within the confines of this series?
Oh, it was vital. I don't think you have a series if you don't approach it that way. First of all, I'm not going to have a show that's centered around a black man. And the first show to be centered around a black male detective on American soil since Hawk in the 80s. And that show only went one season. I'm not doing that and then not giving you a window into his culture, his community, his life experience. That's number one. So that's a responsibility. But the good news is that makes your show better when you actually take it to that level. And that's what I mean. This would not be a series if we didn't do that because folks, and I'm talking about myself too as a crime fan, the shows that I watch because they're mysteries, I'll watch anything. But the shows that I stick with, I have to fall in love with or get invested in the characters. So when we did that, when we built out the fabric of his life and we explored his relationships and his failures and his weaknesses and his struggles, we built a character that people really invested in and start rooting for, and we built a family that people really felt like they were part of. And so it's I think it's one of the things that gives this show legs.
And also, can you share what Blue Monday has on their slate coming up?
Wow, I think the headline would be that we are doing right now. Actually, I'm in Toronto, and we have started a production on a show called The Greatest, which is a it's a story based on a life of Muhammad Ali. Arc from him being just a kid who won the gold medal in Rome all the way to the Rumble in the Jungle.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And I know you said that your mantra with you in casting is the best actor wins, but baby, Prime Video got it in gold when they got the best director, executive producer who wins, which would be you, Ben
Thank
Watkins. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And we'd like to thank you, Ben, and our friends at Prime Video for having this conversation with us today. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us for this half hour with. I'm your host, Carla Renata, and we'll see you next time.